Take it there, who gon' take it there, who gon' take it there, who gon' take it there? Electricity, 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 electricity. You know what's in the air, you know what's in the air, you know what's in the air, you know what's in the air. It's possibility, it's possibility, it's possibility, it's possibility.
So Greece is currently on a general strike. A general strike has been organized in Greece against the right-wing government over things like austerity and lack of public funding. And so because of this, people in Greece have taken to the streets en masse. Some of these videos of the streets of Greece look incredible, but you also see some real resistance from these Greeks where they are directly opposing the police. The police are trying to shut down this general strike, and the Greeks aren't having it. So I want to talk a little bit about what caused this strike, how it was organized, and what are some of the lessons that we can extrapolate from this event. Because, I mean, this is exactly the type of action that is needed in America. And when you look into it, there's a lot of similarities between the reasons that the Greeks have decided to go on strike and things that we are experiencing in America right now. So there's definitely lessons to be learned here. I'm not like an expert on Greek politics, but I've done a little bit of research, and I think that there's some serious parallels here. And this is just a pretty good example of how to organize a general strike and what the point of a general strike is. The fact that that's not necessarily an immediate thing, and that sometimes there are events leading up to that, like smaller strikes, smaller protests that essentially can lay the groundwork, etc. And there's a lot of details to all this stuff. Really, it's something that many episodes could be done on. So maybe I will continue to cover it as it continues to happen. Not sure exactly what their plan is from here, but the basic gist of what's going on is years ago there was a train crash because of a lack of funding for public transit that led to many people dying. Also privatization of public infrastructure and transit infrastructure. And so there was a very serious accident that led to a few people's deaths. And ever since then, this incident has been a big blemish on the credibility of the right-wing Greek government and the austerity measures that they have imposed on Greece. Not only austerity, but privatization. So trying to move away from public funding, giving more and more of public infrastructure over to private businesses under the pretense that they will be able to allocate those resources more efficiently. And it led to a serious crash that there was never really much accountability for. There was obfuscation. I believe the conductor of the train was arrested, but the people, the lawmakers who basically created the policy that allowed this to happen, the lenience that allowed this to happen, were never held accountable. And so this created a long-standing narrative surrounding austerity and how it was hurting the people of Greece. And essentially ever since then, there has been increasing unrest, and I think multiple strikes have been called because of that and for other reasons. So that's the first important point. And also a pretty clear parallel: public transit infrastructure being defunded or privatized, leading to things becoming less safe for the public, more profitable, I'm sure, but less safe. And so this is a moment when something like that happens. It's a moment where the difference between the benefits of privatization and the benefits of public funding become very clear. Because, right-wingers and proponents of austerity love to tell us that private businesses do things better, they're more efficient, government is inefficient, it's wasteful. I mean, this is characterizing what's happening in America right now. They are pilfering the federal government under this sort of vague pretense that government as a whole is wasteful. Not just like certain parts of the government, there are certain programs we want to target as wasteful, but government as a whole is wasteful. And the reason they're doing that in America is because they need to try to slash as much as they possibly can to make room for tax cuts for the wealthy. But then when you do that, there are real consequences that real people will see in their lives. And we see this a little bit with the planes crashing and becoming less safe in America. It's an example of the same thing, not quite exactly the same, but similar. So because of this event, because real accountability never happened for this event, it has continued to be a thing that exercises the Greek people into action. So this is something that on a broad level, people in Greece recognize as really a direct attack on them. This is a form of class warfare, this type of privatization, especially when it leads to deaths, unnecessary deaths. This is class warfare. So not only does Greece seem to have an understanding, and the workers of Greece seem to have an understanding of that, but it is also, there are groups within Greece that are utilizing that talking point. They're taking this thing that happened and they're not just letting it go away. They're not letting it get brushed under the rug, which is definitely what the Greek government has wanted and been trying to do about it. But instead, they keep talking about it, they keep people informed about it, and they keep using it as an organizing vehicle. So, labor unions, students and universities, and the Communist Party of Greece, I think it's called the KKE, are the ones who are responsible for organizing this. And obviously, labor unions, trade unions are the most important points of that, because they are the labor, they are the ones who can officially call the strike. But you also have students in universities who are canvassing aggressively, and they are turning these universities into hubs of organizing for these strikes. So that's important as well. The collaboration between not just the labor unions and the students, but also the Communist Party of Greece, the people who are best equipped to understand class struggle and class warfare and know what to do about it. And that's probably the most important distinction between what we see happening in Greece and the current state of affairs in America. And we'll get to that a little bit later. But essentially what they've done is they've created a series of labor actions leading up to this general strike. And it wasn't done in a way where it was like necessarily that was the plan the whole time. But what happened is the unrest that came from the public consciousness over the injustice of this train crash and the fact that the public is aware that austerity measures are hurting them, that has led to enough unrest that could be fomented into a few pocket strikes that grew in size until eventually those could be leveraged as organizing points to get the mass amount of people possible on board with this general strike. So that's how they have gotten this to the point that it's at, to where you see these massive amounts of solidarity. You have lots of small businesses and people in the country closing their doors in solidarity with this strike. This is a huge movement, and you see a ton of support for the anti-austerity sentiment that is underlying this labor action. And obviously, this is interesting for many reasons. This is the type of labor action that we need to see really globally. I mean, if these types of general strikes happened globally with the coordinated intention of bringing right-wing austerity governments to heel, it would be blindingly effective. And Greece is kind of showing us how it's done, because this is not just a protest. This isn't like a parade. This isn't like a demonstration. We're going to show the people how powerful it would be if we stop consuming goods for one day. This is a real strike. And the difference between that and some of these more performative demonstrations, which I'm not saying that those aren't good or shouldn't be done, but there's a very real difference in efficacy between that and a real strike. Because a real strike is saying, we are going to bring this entire society to a halt. We are not going to allow the flow of commerce and capitalism to continue until these concerns are addressed. And they want austerity measures rolled back. They want more public investment. I also believe that they want to stop weapons shipments to NATO, which is an interesting part of this. The Communist Party of Greece is not a fan of NATO. And I mean, you could make the argument that NATO only exists as a way to stop global communism, or at least that's why it was started. And then at this point, I would say it serves different functions than that. However, the sentiment of communists and NATO skeptics is definitely gaining ground in this century. And it's entirely possible that the coalition of NATO is in the process of falling apart. And that could lead to negative and potentially positive results, where, you know, somebody like Vladimir Putin, who is a dictator with no particular ideology other than self-enrichment, definitely stands to be empowered by the weakening of NATO. But it also is potentially possible that communist movements in various parts of the world could also gain momentum if NATO were to be weakened. And the Communist Party of Greece is interesting because they are the oldest political party in Greece. And they were illegalized until 1974. The government of Greece was run by the military for a period, and only when that regime fell was it re-legalized to be a part of the Greek Communist Party. And now we are seeing them starting to gain some momentum in terms of organizing and putting the pieces together to really take massive action against the capitalist class, the business class, the global military industry, etc. So we'll see where this goes. They have a lot of solidarity on their side right now. And if they keep this up for a few days, the government is probably going to have no choice but to capitulate. Regardless of what way this goes, it is going to be an excellent example of both what could happen here and the potential pitfalls or success stories that could come with it. It's possible that this movement could be crushed. It's possible that the coalition of people who are in Greece that support this could fall apart, depending on how bad things get. Part of a strike is that the flow of commerce stops completely, which means, it gets hard for people. It gets hard for workers. And then you also have people who are not workers, who they might not feel like they have a dog in this fight. And so in conditions like that, people can become upset with strikers. However, like I said, there seems to be a lot of solidarity in Greece over this strike because there's a broad understanding in the populace that austerity measures from the right-wing government are hurting them, and the right-wing government obscuring accountability for disasters like this train crash that happened is a direct attack and affront on the citizens of Greece. And that is the type of class consciousness, really, that America seems to lack at the moment. However, it is there. It's right under the surface. And it's interesting to me that an event like this train crash could essentially set the stage for this whole general strike. And again, there's other factors leading up to it, but the point being that the organizers of this strike understood that that event is the best way to communicate to the most amount of people in the simplest terms how the austerity government is hurting them and why something needs to be done about it. And so this is how the sort of symbolic nature of certain movements becomes something much bigger than any general strike, any government, any individual movement, or anything like that. And it becomes something that the people broadly stand up together in solidarity over. And so in America, as we see public infrastructure being defunded, all of these government programs, you got Elon Musk going on Joe Rogan and talking about how Social Security is a Ponzi scheme. And, you know, they are trying to drive as many wedges between people and government services and any form of solidarity or collective action as they can. And Americans, for sure, seem to be falling for it, a lot of them. However, as I've said before, a lot of the people that elected Trump, or at least a decent portion of them, are in labor. Labor is an important factor, even in the Republican coalition at this point. And it's not to say that they are going to do what labor wants without being forced to, but they at least right now are in a position of having to pretend to represent labor among other interest groups, among the other interest groups that we know they represent, like big business and that sort of thing. And so there is a general strike that Sean Fain of the UAW has called for in 2028, which is a long way away. That's also the next presidential election. So by then, this Trump term will have already run its course for the most part. So you could definitely argue that that might not be soon enough. However, if we use what's happening in Greece as an example, this was not something that happened in a single flashpoint, although that's part of it, but multiple stages of these strikes leading up to this major general strike is what allowed for the most amount of people to be brought on board with this cause and to understand why it is that this strike is happening. If a strike happened tomorrow in America, there's a lot of, aside from the fact that, you know, all of the Trump people would just trot out propaganda for them, there's a lot of people who would not understand the dynamics of that strike and how it affects them and why it's important to pick the right side in that fight. So that is our biggest obstacle in America. And if there is some kind of major general strike event that's going to happen in 2028 or sooner, whatever, there do have to be smaller events, including business boycotts, demonstrations, whatever, smaller strikes. Things like that have to happen in the interim in order to bring more and more people on board with labor action, especially when people start to see that it works. So that has to also be combined with people understanding what is really in their best interest in terms of government, which is pushing back on austerity, public investment, making sure that public investment is done efficiently and honestly and transparently, for sure. But that's just what Republicans are using as cover, this idea of transparency or efficiency. They're just using that because they want to slash as much as they can. But if we can convince the biggest amount of people, especially people in labor, in the workforce of this country, that the government services that are being slashed are directly hurting them, and that attacking those programs in the government is tantamount to an attack on the people. That is the type of class consciousness that Americans need to have, because not only is that going to hopefully allow us to mount a defense against some of these programs, but it will also pave the way for these programs to be expanded and for more of our country and economy to be based around public investment. And the people who are in power right now hate public investment. That's the last thing that they want. They want to take all the public investment they can and allocate it elsewhere. And so in the course of that, there are going to be disasters that happen. We already see it with these planes. Plane crashes are deadlier and more dangerous than they were before. Even if you want to say that it's not technically more events that are happening, but they are more dangerous. It is more dangerous to fly now than it was because they're getting rid of FAA agents and air traffic controllers, and they're interfering with the way these jobs are done in the name of privatization and capital. And so I don't want anybody to die. I don't want anybody to die in public transit or on a plane or anywhere. But there are going to be events that occur that are going to be impossible for the public of America to ignore. And those are going to be the best tools that we have to making people understand why government is important and to making people understand that capitalists like Donald Trump and Elon Musk do not have their best interests in mind. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. And if you really want to support, consider becoming a member. It's the best way to support me and my content. I'm going to be posting all kinds of exclusive content like exclusive podcasts, songs, beats. If you like the beats that play in the back of these podcasts, all that's going to be posted there. And if you have ideas for other types of content you would like to see exclusively, let me know and we'll figure some things out.